Hello, my name is Jaune, welcome to my channel. My friends, after so long, we have finally received the RWBY Volume 9 teaser trailer. And another delay. This time till early 2023. But it's alright. I wish it was coming out earlier, but animation is tough, man. And they've apparently also been working on something else pretty big that, I'll probably talk about in another video, because this isn't the video for that. But regardless, with the release of this trailer, I knew I had to break it down and theorize about everything. Obviously, spoiler warning is in effect. We start the trailer off seeing RWBY in a strange, cloudy location that, to me, looks almost like it could be some kind of mental landscape or something. The pose she does kind of makes me think of Cinder in her flashbacks in Volume 8, but it also could just be some theatrical staging that they like, as opposed to a reference or a callback. During this, and throughout the rest of the trailer, we hear someone narrating in the background, presumably the story of the girl who fell through the world, which we heard about last volume. We don't really have any indication of who this might be, but I've seen some people suggested Summer reading the story to RWBY and Yang as kids, which I kind of dig that. I would like that if that was the case. We see a brief clip of the scene that was released at the last RTX before moving on to this super trippy set piece. The bells seem to have diamond designs on them, while the butterfly has hearts on its wings. Given the connection to Alice in Wonderland, this is probably going to be notable, though I'll need to do some more research on that story before I draw any conclusions. The next thing we see is RWBY holding on to what I thought was a piece of glass or crystal, until someone pointed out that it's probably one of Penny's swords. The light gleams against it and we see Penny's face, almost seeming like a parallel to the shot of Jaune we saw of him looking at his reflection in his sword before he killed Penny. So, that's fun. That's fun stuff. We see RWBY with her new animal companion, a mouse she named Little, looking shocked at something, then an image of the full Team RWBY looking out into Ever After. By the way, it was revealed this place is called the Ever After. This shot is really interesting to me because it kind of confirms the theory I had that the island would be divided into different sections, though something quite like this I never would have imagined. Aside from the tree itself and the jungle/beach they initially arrived in, there seem to be 9 distinct biomes, which matches perfectly with the 9 worlds connected to Yggdrasil, as I discussed in the video. Looking at each one, there's this crazy Candyland area in the front left, behind it being a mountain range, I think. There also seems to be some kind of chain around the mountain, I think, which could connect to a new figure we see later in the trailer. In the middle is this cool mushroom forest, and what's next to it looks kind of like the Forever Fall to me, though I can't be sure. There's also this place that looks kind of like confetti, but I can't really tell what it is, honestly. Behind that is an area with volcanoes of some sort, and this awesome flying island with waterfalls coming off it. There's another mountain range behind the volcanoes, but looks to be more snowy than the first, and lacks the chain type thing. Then, far in the distance, on the opposite side of the tree is what looks like some kind of metropolis, a city with huge skyscrapers. Though, in theory, these could be more mountains that just kind of look weird. I don't know. Moving on, the next thing we see is a knight wreathed in flames. And guys, I have some theories here, which I'll cover in a bit, but this is Jaune's armor, right? The pauldrons are bigger and a helmet has been added, but that is very explicitly Jaune's chest piece. Also, I checked to see if the helmet design was the same as the animated armor that Ozma fought in The Lost Fable, but it doesn't seem to be. Again, I'm going to discuss this in a bit, but this is super interesting. After that, we see this monster-looking guy that has horns and a mask. This thing strangely looks a fair bit like the God of Darkness. Specifically, the purple motif, horns, and mask, which looks kinda like the God of Darkness's dragon form. It's not exact though, and with yellow accents and extra horns, I'm not really sure exactly what's going on here. There's also some interesting motion blur they use for it that gives it this almost incorporeal feel as it moves its head. We see Neo looking angry, understandably, and I think she's in the volcano area, but I'm not certain of that. There's a quick flash showing someone else walking on the beach in a blue and yellow skirt, presumably Alex, the original girl who fell through the world from the story, and then there's quick flashes of characters all asking what. First, there's Little, and what seems to be an older person in a crown, who is probably some kind of Red Queen parallel. We see a cat, obviously a Cheshire Cat parallel, some kind of three-eyed thing under some leaves, which I'm not sure what it would be paralleling, so if you have any ideas, let me know. And most notably, this crazy-looking character with chains and seemingly mechanical parts on them. This seems like it'll probably be the main antagonist of this arc, most likely based on the Queen of Hearts. I think this figure is probably residing in the Chained Mountain area I talked about earlier, and I have an idea about who this might be, but I'll get to that in a bit. After that, we see RWBY looking angrily into a chest before closing it, and the voiceover flows from the character asking what into the narrator asking, "What are you?" I'm kind of wondering if this volume is going to do a more in-depth explanation to the Silver-Eyed Warriors and their connection to the God of Light. Maybe even Alex was a Silver-Eyed Warrior, and that'll be revealed. Finally, we see shots of each Team RWBY member as piano music plays in the background. RWBY's is actually kind of interesting, so I'll save that one for last. Weiss's, we see her crying, and I guess this is most likely when she tells RWBY and maybe the rest of the team what happened to Penny. We see Blake walk past some vines to look at something, presumably. And you can see in the background she is already with the rest of her team at this point. Finally, we see Yang smiling and seemingly in the Snowy Mountain area. Though in theory she could also be in the Candyland area and just in like a whipped cream, I don't know. Now, here's why RWBY's shot is interesting. She has this sad and kind of shocked look on her face, and there are what look to be wrenches in the background. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think that they're wrenches. That's the image that I'm getting here. What's most interesting to me, though, is the lighting. It's coming from directly in front of her and gives off this warm orange glow, almost like a fire. And that made me think, we've seen fire earlier in this trailer, haven't we? Twice. In fact, in front of the somewhat mechanical figure who may need tools for upkeep, hence the wrenches, and the other time surrounding the knight wearing Jaune's armor. I think that this scene with RWBY could be one of the earliest moments of meeting this main villain, and them revealing that this knight, Jaune, is working for them. Now, Joe, I hear you saying, that doesn't make sense. Why would Jaune work for this person who's against his friends? Well, I am glad you asked, voice I have assigned to the audience. Before I go into that, you should know that RT also released a 4-minute clip of this volume's first episode, and this discussion will include spoilers for that, so maybe jump out here if you want to avoid that. In that clip, we see that emotions seem to affect the world around our heroes in some way. RWBY crying seeming to make rain start pouring. Based on this, and based on how trippy this volume will probably be, I could totally see the character's psyche having an effect on the world and even each other or themselves. With Jaune's guilt over what he did to Penny, he might start seeing himself as something much darker. A murderer, an antagonist, a villain. And even though RWBY wouldn't mean to, she may subconsciously feel the same. The state of the world may cause those thoughts and feelings to change Jaune into what we see in the trailer. That brings us back to the person he is serving, though, and I have an idea about that. What if, and hear me out here, what if it's Pyrrha? I don't mean like real Pyrrha or even Pyrrha's soul. I mean a nightmare version of Pyrrha. Maybe born from RWBY's guilt of not being able to save her, and in turn, blaming RWBY for her death. When I first saw the figure, I couldn't help but think that the chain on their head reminded me of the chains on Pyrrha's circlet. And while you can't really make out the hair color on them, if you zoom in, there are some areas that look like they could be red. Plus, we need to consider what characters these two will be paralleling. Given the figure, whoever they may be, is likely to be a stand-in for the Queen of Hearts, I think Jaune would make sense as the Knave of Hearts. And while in the original Alice in Wonderland books, the Knave is pretty much just a random guy who may or may not have stolen some tarts, in the Tim Burton film, he is portrayed as someone the Queen of Hearts is in love with. Kinda. She's kind of both the Queen of Hearts and the Red Queen in that movie. I know, it's confusing. Still, that could be a good connection linking them to Jaune and Pyrrha. Now, I don't think this is necessarily the case, but I thought I'd bring it up. I do definitely think Jaune is the Knave of Hearts here, though. At least if he is the one in the armor. He also might be something else too, though. Now, this is total crack theory time, but hear me out. What if Jaune is the mouse? I know, but let's think about this. Little is probably going to be the stand-in for both the dormouse and just the mouse. In the original book, the mouse is the first thing Alice talked to in Wonderland, much like with Little here, and tells a story supposedly about its life that parallels and foreshadows the trial the Knave faces at the end. Thanks for that info, SparkNotes, helping me out now as much as you did in high school. I also noticed the scene where Little and RWBY meet is just a little bit similar to the scene where Jaune and RWBY first meet. RWBY falling to the ground in exasperation and sadness, only to find distraction and comfort in the volume's comic relief character. Finally, the way Little sees names is interesting. They seem to view names as something you do, your purpose, rather than a way to identify yourself. It's possible, with the way he wants to live up to his ancestors, that Jaune feels the same way. That being an Arc is something that you do, not something that you are. I'll admit, this is a huge stretch, but I think it'd be kind of interesting. So, with this connection in mind, how would this work with both the knight and this mouse being Jaune? Again, total crack theory, but maybe the grief of his actions caused Jaune's psyche to split in a way, and manifest as the two ways he sees himself. The knight, a symbol of death and harm, due to how everyone he loves seems to get hurt because of him, at least in his eyes. And the mouse, a weak, helpless creature who can't even forage for food on its own, who, to Jaune, would not be able to ever save anyone, but despite that, is still willing to help if given the opportunity. It could lead to a resolution near the end of the volume where the two parts come together again and restore the Jaune we know. Regardless, I'm super excited and can't wait till the volume comes out. But hey, those are just my thoughts. What do you think? Agree? Disagree? Do you think it's Jaune in the armor or someone else? Let me know in the comments down below. And, subscribe. More RWBY stuff is coming out again, so I should be making more videos about it when it does. Till next time, safe journeys, my friends.